Hey, everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at Kuwait.
Okay.
Specifically, their short-term work visa program that they recently reopened for government contracts.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we're pulling all this info from an article in Travelobiz, which is a travel news portal. So they tend to be pretty on top of all these changes.
That's good.
And it's actually really timely because Kuwait has made like a ton of visa policy changes just this year alone.
Yeah.
So we're going to be breaking down like what exactly are these short-term work visas? What do you need to actually get one? And what does it mean for both Kuwait and like the people who are actually going there to work?
Okay.
Oh, and we're also going to touch on the Indian workforce in Kuwait because apparently it's like a pretty big part of this whole thing.
So I think what's really interesting about these short-term visas is that it seems like Kuwait is using them to kind of like strategically address their labor needs.
Okay.
So, these visas are specifically for government projects that only last less than a year. So it gives them a lot of flexibility to address like these very like specific and immediate labor needs without having to commit to anything long term.
So it's almost like instead of hiring like a permanent employee, they're bringing in like experts for like a specific project, almost like consultants in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it's beneficial for both sides. For Kuwait, they're getting that targeted expertise for a specific project. And then for the foreign workers,
Right.
it's a great way to gain experience, potentially like boost their careers.
Yeah. And like get paid, obviously.
Of course. Of course. It can be quite lucrative.
Yeah. So it's like a win-win for everybody. Kuwait gets the talent, foreign workers get the experience and a paycheck. But there has to be like some kind of ground rules,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't just show up in Kuwait and be like, hey, I'm here to work. Like what are the hoops you have to jump through?
Totally. There are definitely some requirements you have to meet. First off, you need a passport that's valid for at least 6 months after you plan to leave Kuwait. That's pretty standard for international travel these days, just making sure you can wrap things up and go back home without any visa issues.
Right. You don't want to get stuck in Kuwait because your passport's expired.
Exactly. Then, of course, you need a completed visa application, which is where you're officially stating your intention to work there, and a passport photo. Pretty standard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then things get a little more specific.
Like what kind of specific?
You need to have a recent HIV/AIDS test result and a health certificate from a recognized doctor.
Yeah.
Just making sure you're in good health and not posing a public health risk.
Yeah.
You also need a police clearance certificate to prove you have a clean criminal record.
Okay.
It's all about safety and security for both the foreign worker and the Kuwaiti community.
It's interesting to think about it from Kuwait's perspective too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just about filling jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, managing risk and protecting their citizens and maintaining a certain standard. Like it's kind of like how we vet tenants before renting out an apartment, right? You want to make sure they're reliable and trustworthy.
Yeah.
But okay, so you've got all your paperwork in order.
Mm-hmm.
What about like the actual application process? What does that look like?
Well, it's a multi-step process that involves your potential employer, the Kuwaiti government, and of course you.
Sure.
So first, your employer in Kuwait would send your work permit to either the Kuwaiti embassy in your home country, or if there isn't one, directly to the Ministry of Interior in Kuwait.
Okay.
And they also need to include a no objection certificate for you, or NOC.
So the NOC is like Kuwait saying, yeah, we've checked this person out. We're okay with them coming to work here.
Exactly. Then once you have the NOC, you can enter Kuwait.
Okay.
But you're not done yet. You have 30 days to apply for a residency visa
Yeah.
and get a Kuwait civil ID, which makes your stay and work legal.
So it's all very like structured. It seems like you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah, definitely. As long as you've got all your ducks in a row.
But here's where I think things get like really interesting. So it's not just that they've reopened this program. It's that Kuwait has been kind of tweaking their whole visa system throughout 2023. What's going on with that? Like why all the changes?
Well, it seems like they're adapting to the changing global landscape of work and migration. In July, they made a big change. Foreign workers in the domestic sector, like housekeepers or nannies, can now switch to private sector jobs.
Wow. So they're not stuck in those roles anymore.
Yeah,
That gives them so much more control over their careers and their future.
it's a big step. Another change also from July allows government workers to move to the private sector after a year of service.
Okay.
It does involve a transfer fee, and their employer has to agree,
Right.
but it opens up more avenues for career advancement.
So there's a lot more movement and flexibility now.
Exactly. And there's also the case of the Filipino workers.
Mm-hmm.
There was a year-long ban on them, but it was lifted in June after Kuwait improved their labor conditions. It just goes to show how international relations and labor standards play a role in these policies. What happens in one country has a direct impact on workers from another.
Yeah, it's all connected. But you know what really caught my eye in the article?
What's that?
They mentioned that the Indian workforce in Kuwait is massive.
Oh, yeah. It's quite significant.
Like, how big are we talking?
Indians make up about 30% of Kuwait's total workforce.
Wow.
And around 21% of Kuwait's 4.2 million population is of Indian origin.
That's a huge percentage. It makes you wonder what brings so many Indians to Kuwait. I mean, it's not exactly next door.
It's a complex mix of factors. Economic opportunities are a big draw, of course, but there are also historical ties between the two countries.
Right.
And for some, it might be about seeking new experiences, new challenges, maybe even escaping difficult situations back home.
It's like a whole world within a world. It reminds me of those little Italy or Chinatown districts you find in big cities, but on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
But they're not all doing the same kind of work, are they?
You're right. While you'll find Indians working across various sectors, engineering, healthcare, IT business, a significant number, about 61%, are in labor-intensive roles.
And the article mentioned these minimum referral wages for Indian workers. The MRWs? What are those all about?
The MRWs are essentially minimum wages set by the Indian government for their citizens working in Kuwait. So, for example, carpenters, masons, drivers, and pipe fitters start at $300 per month, while heavy vehicle drivers and domestic workers earn slightly more depending on their specific occupation.
So the Indian government's trying to protect their citizens from being exploited abroad. It's like they're saying, we want our people to have opportunities, but not at the expense of their well-being.
Exactly. It's about ensuring their citizens have a basic level of protection and fair treatment in the international labor market.
So much to unpack there. But I feel like we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, we have.
Like we've gone over what these short-term work visas in Kuwait are, the requirements, the application process, the recent changes to their visa policies, and now even the Indian workforce there. What are your thoughts on the bigger picture so far?
I think what's really striking is how proactive Kuwait is being in reshaping its labor market. You know, these changes suggest they're aiming for a more flexible system, one that can respond to the needs of both the government and the private sector.
It's like they're saying we need to adapt to this changing global landscape and make sure we can attract and retain the talent we need.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even begun to explore the potential long-term implications of these changes.
That's true. There's so much more to delve into.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good point to maybe leave our listeners with something to think about before we continue.
Okay.
What's like a key takeaway you'd want them to consider?
I'd say think about this. How might these recent changes to Kuwait's visa policies impact not just their economy, but their relationship with key labor-sending nations like India in the years to come?
It's a question with many layers, and we'll continue to peel them back as we go deeper.
We will.
So stick with us as we continue our deep dive into Kuwait's evolving labor landscape.
Sounds good. It's fascinating to think about like the people who are actually seeking these short-term work visas in Kuwait.
Right.
We're talking about individuals from all over the world, each with their own unique story, their own reasons for taking this leap.
It's easy to get caught up in the statistics and the big picture of global migration.
Right.
But like you said, behind every data point, there's a human being making a pretty, life-altering decision.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you think might be driving these individuals?
Well, economics plays a huge role, of course. The chance to earn a higher wage, maybe send more money back home to their families, that's a powerful motivator.
Definitely.
But it's not always just about the money.
There's the allure of, working on these international projects,
Yeah.
gaining new skills, maybe even advancing their careers in ways they couldn't back home.
Exactly. It's a chance to expand their horizons, both professionally and personally.
It's a big decision, though.
Oh, definitely.
No matter what the reason is. They're weighing the potential benefits against the challenges of being away from home, adapting to a new environment, maybe even learning a new language.
It's a balancing act for sure.
Risk versus reward. But for a lot of people, those potential rewards outweigh the risks.
Right. Especially when you consider the impact it can have not just on the individual, but on their families back home.
Yeah, think about a skilled engineer from, say, Egypt, who lands a short-term contract to work on a major infrastructure project in Kuwait.
Right.
The income he earns could mean his kids can go to a better school.
Right.
Or his family can finally afford that much-needed medical care.
Exactly. It has a ripple effect.
It's like a lifeline. Not just for the individual, but for their whole support network back home. But let's be real. It's not always smooth sailing, is it?
Of course not. There are challenges, cultural differences to navigate potential for misunderstandings,
Right.
and we can't ignore the potential for exploitation. Yeah.
While those minimum referral wages set by the Indian government offer some protection, there's always a risk, especially for those in those like labor-intensive roles that they might face unfair treatment
Right.
or wages below what they were promised.
What can be done to protect these workers?
Well, thankfully, there are organizations in place to help. The Indian Embassy in Kuwait, for example, plays a crucial role in supporting and advocating for the rights of Indian workers.
Okay.
And there are various NGOs working on the ground to provide resources and guidance, making sure that workers are aware of their rights and have access to support if needed.
So there's like a safety net,
Yeah.
at least for some workers. It's good to know there are people looking out for them. But like stepping back a bit from the individual level, what do you think is the driving force behind all these changes to Kuwait's visa policies?
I think Kuwait recognizes the need for a more dynamic and responsive labor market.
Okay.
They're trying to attract a diverse range of fill specific needs
Great.
and adapt to the ebb and flow of the global economy. So it's like they're saying we need to be more agile, more adaptable if we want to stay competitive.
Precisely. And this shift towards flexibility isn't just about economics. It has social and cultural implications as well.
How so?
Well, when you open your doors to a more diverse workforce, you inevitably create a more multicultural society.
It's like a cultural tapestry woven with threads from all over the world, each one contributing its own unique color and texture.
I like that analogy. And that tapestry, if woven with care and respect, can be incredibly vibrant and beautiful. But of course, with any large-scale societal shift, there can be challenges.
There might be cultural clashes, language barriers, even prejudices to overcome.
Yeah.
How can Kuwait, navigate those potential pitfalls?
It takes a conscious effort from everyone involved. The government needs to create policies that promote inclusivity and protect the rights of all workers regardless of their origin.
Okay.
Employers need to foster understanding and respect within the workplace.
And individuals within Kuwaiti society need to be open to embracing this diversity.
Yeah, seeing it as a strength, not a threat.
It's about building bridges, not walls. It's about recognizing that we all have something to offer, something to learn from each other.
It's a journey towards a more inclusive and interconnected world.
Yeah, but let's not sugarcoat things.
Right.
There are valid concerns that need to be addressed. Some Kuwaiti citizens might be worried about job security,
Of course.
feeling like foreign workers are taking away opportunities. How do we address those fears?
Open and honest dialogue is essential. We need to acknowledge those concerns and have conversations about how to create a system where everyone benefits, where economic growth is shared equitably. It's not about pitting Kuwaiti citizens against foreign workers. It's about finding ways to work together to create a more prosperous future for everyone.
It's about shifting the narrative from competition to collaboration,
Exactly.
from fear to understanding. But how do we actually make that happen?
It requires a multifaceted approach. Investing in education and training programs to equip Kuwaiti citizens with the skills they need to thrive in a globalized economy is key.
So it's not just about bringing in foreign talent. It's about empowering Kuwaiti citizens to compete and succeed.
Exactly. And it's about fostering entrepreneurship, encouraging innovation, creating opportunities for Kuwaitis to excel in sectors where they might have a competitive advantage.
And we can't forget about cultural preservation.
Right.
As Kuwait becomes more diverse, it's important to celebrate and protect its unique heritage.
Absolutely.
Make sure that Kuwaiti traditions and values continue to flourish.
It's a delicate balance, embracing the opportunities of globalization while safeguarding the essence of what makes Kuwait unique.
It's a dance, a constant negotiation between the old and the new, the familiar and the foreign.
And that dance, if choreographed with sensitivity and wisdom, can be quite beautiful.
It's a journey filled with both challenges and opportunities, a journey that Kuwait is bravely undertaking. But there's another perspective we need to consider,
Okay.
one that's often overlooked in these discussions.
And what perspective is that?
The perspective of Kuwaiti citizens themselves. How do they view these changes to their country's visa policies and this influx of foreign workers?
That's a really important question. It's easy to talk about policy changes and economic trends,
Right.
but we can't forget about the human element.
Yeah, how are Kuwaiti citizens actually experiencing these shifts?
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be a mixed bag, right?
I would imagine so. In any society, when you're dealing with rapid change, there are going to be different viewpoints, anxieties, hopes, all wrapped up together.
Absolutely. Some Kuwaitis might be enthusiastic about the economic benefits that foreign workers bring.
Right. Like think about like the construction boom, new businesses popping up.
Yeah.
That adds a lot of dynamism to the economy.
Exactly. And they might also appreciate the cultural exchange, the exposure to new ideas and ways of life.
It's like that saying, variety is the spice of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's a wider range of cuisines to try different traditions to learn about. Gives their cities a more cosmopolitan feel.
But it's also natural for some Kuwaitis to feel apprehensive about it all, right?
Oh, sorry.
Like maybe worried about job security.
Yeah.
Whether there will be enough opportunities for themselves and their children in this new landscape.
Those are valid concerns.
And it's not just jobs either, right?
Yeah.
There could be concerns about preserving Kuwaiti culture and identity with all these new influences coming in.
That's a big one. How do you welcome the world without losing yourself in the process?
It's a tough question.
It is, and it's a question that deserves to be addressed openly and honestly. You know, we need to acknowledge those concerns, engage in dialogues, explore both the perceived benefits and the potential challenges of these changes.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels heard,
Exactly.
where their anxieties are taken seriously and solutions are sought collaboratively.
It can't just be a top-down approach.
No, definitely not. It's about making everyone feel like they're a stakeholder in this process of change.
Exactly. And that means investing in education and training programs that equip Kuwaiti citizens with the skills they need to compete in a globalized economy.
So it's not about seeing foreign workers as competition.
Right.
It's about equipping Kuwaiti citizens to work with them
To collaborate.
in a way that benefits everyone.
Precisely. And it's not just about acquiring technical skills. It's about fostering a mindset of adaptability, creativity, entrepreneurial spirit.
Encouraging Kuwaitis to like identify new opportunities.
Yeah, carve out their own niches in this evolving landscape.
It's like saying, hey, the world is changing and we're going to embrace that change, ride that wave,
Yeah.
and turn it into something positive for ourselves.
Exactly. And let's not forget the importance of cultural preservation. As Kuwait becomes more diverse, it's vital to celebrate and protect its unique heritage.
Right, like supporting traditional arts and crafts, promoting Kuwaiti literature and music.
Exactly, making sure that those aspects of their identity are not only preserved, but also shared and appreciated by newcomers.
It's like creating this vibrant cultural mosaic where each piece retains its individual beauty,
Yeah,
but it all contributes to like the richness of the overall design.
beautiful. It's a delicate balancing act, though.
It is. How do you welcome the world without losing what makes Kuwait Kuwait?
It requires thoughtful planning, open communication, and a genuine commitment to inclusivity. It's about fostering a sense of shared ownership,
Right.
ensuring that all Kuwaitis feel like they're benefiting from these policies, not just a select few.
And that takes time.
It does. It doesn't happen overnight. It's an ongoing process of adaptation, negotiation, and hopefully, ultimately, integration.
It's a journey.
It is. And there will be bumps along the way. But I think what we're seeing in Kuwait is a willingness to embark on that journey, to embrace the complexities and navigate the challenges with a spirit of openness and innovation.
This is a fascinating case study, a microcosm of these larger global trends we're seeing everywhere. Increasing mobility, shifting demographics, the blurring of borders.
It reminds us that we're all interconnected, whether we realize it or not. What happens in one corner of the world can have ripple effects that touch the lives of people thousands of miles away.
And it highlights the need for empathy, for understanding, for a willingness to see the world through different lenses.
It's about recognizing that diversity isn't just a statistic. It's a source of richness, creativity, and strength.
Well said. So we've explored Kuwait's short-term work visa program, delved into the motivations of those seeking these opportunities, and considered the broader economic and social implications for both Kuwait and those labor-sending nations.
We've also touched on the challenges and opportunities that come with creating a more diverse and inclusive society.
And maybe most importantly, we've raised questions about how these changes are being experienced by Kuwaiti citizens themselves.
Right.
The hopes, concerns, and aspirations they hold for the future.
It's a complex and ever-evolving story, one that deserves our continued attention and thoughtful consideration.
Thank you for joining